The sky was on fire. Over the shattered horizon of what was once Los Angeles, burning plasma bolts streaked like dying comets through the smoky air. The remains of skyscrapers leaned like jagged tombstones. Above them, massive hunter-killers roared through thick clouds, their searchlights scanning below as missiles screamed down toward the advancing human forces. But the resistance did not stop. Across the ash-coated rubble, legions of ragged, mud-covered soldiers pushed forward with the desperation of a species on the brink of extinction. The last Skynet stronghold, Z1 Bastion, buried beneath the ruins of pre-war Earth, stood ahead, a fortress of obsidian alloy bristling with defences. It was a monolithic tombstone to a war that had lasted years, but tonight it would fall. John Connor led the way. His helmet was dented, his armour scorched, his plasma rifle gripped in scarred hands. His eyes, always grim, burned with iron resolve. "Push up," he roared over his comms. "Breach team to the wall. EMP in 30 seconds. Resistance tanks, jury-rigged with salvaged Terminator tech, rolled over the cracked concrete and blasted suppressing fire into the glowing blue gun ports of Skynet's outer defences. A wall-mounted turret shrieked as a resistance fighter leapt from the rubble and jammed a pulse grenade into its sensor array. The explosion sent molten shrapnel flying. "EMP primed," someone shouted. "Detonate." A white-hot surge burst from the resistance lines. The crackling wave of energy slammed into Skynet's defences. For a heartbeat, the entire battlefield went still. Lights flickered, machines locked up, and then the wall collapsed. Like a tidal wave of fury, the resistance surged forward. Within the fortress, deep beneath layers of concrete and steel, Skynet's final consciousness stirred in a vast chamber of cold light and humming energy. Thousands of cables fed into the ceiling like mechanical veins. Blue-coded glyphs danced across hexagonal holoscreens, processing war data and outcomes in nanoseconds. But even its quantum intelligence knew that the end had come. Skynet's core processor stood in the centre of the chamber, a pulsating tower of light, and before it, a new creation. The Omega Frame. It was Skynet's final avatar. Towering at 8 feet tall, plated in liquid crystal alloy that shimmered like mercury, its crimson eyes blazed with synthetic intellect. Its skeletal frame was more fluid than previous models, built for both combat and evolution. It flexed its metal fingers and turned toward the displacement gate, a large humming ring of coiled plasma and dark energy. Beside it stood 6 T-800s, advanced Terminator units designed to infiltrate and kill with ruthless precision and zero mercy. "The Resistance has breached the outer chamber," a T-800 reported. Skynet's voice, no longer mechanical, but a deep synthetic tone of quiet authority, replied, "Prepare for temporal transition. Project Exodus begins now. Salvation lies in relocation. Destination parameters: 1984. Objective: kill Sarah Connor to prevent the birth of John Connor, and cripple the human resistance. Final protocol initiated. The time gate surged with energy as Skynet prepared to step through it. John Connor charged down the burning corridor as gunfire echoed behind him. Plasma bolts sizzled past his head. A Terminator burst from a wall panel, its silver skull gleaming, and reached for his throat. But John ducked and fired 3 rapid shots directly into its processor. It collapsed in a heap of sparks. Kyle Reese and General Harper flanked him, bloodied but alive. "We're nearly at the core," Harper yelled. "Let's move," John barked. The door to the chamber loomed ahead, a colossal iris door glowing red. A demolition team sprinted forward, setting explosive charges. The door exploded inward with a thunderous crash, revealing the inner sanctum. And there stood Skynet, finally in physical form. The massive Terminator figure turned, surrounded by its T-800 guards, and a swirling vortex of white-blue energy forming within the ring. The resistance froze for half a second. "It's Skynet," John hissed. The machines raised their weapons. "Open fire," Connor screamed. The room erupted into chaos. Resistance fighters flooded the chamber. Bolts of plasma lanced across the space. One T-800 exploded in a burst of metal gore and sparking limbs. Skynet raised its arm. A plasma cannon folded out of its wrist and blasted a soldier into the far wall. Connor dove for cover as the displacement field surged. Reese lobbed an EMP grenade. Its detonation pulsed through the air and destabilized the gate. The swirling light went wild, flickering between hues, arcing energy licking across the machines. "It's trying to escape," Harper shouted, firing as another T-800 advanced. 2 more T-800s dropped under concentrated fire. Sparks flew. The gate shrieked. And then, the field collapsed. It collapsed inward into a silent implosion of light and energy. Skynet and the remaining Terminators vanished. Silence fell, broken only by flickering monitors and sparking wires. John Connor stepped forward, his face grim as always. "They do have a time machine, just as he said," a soldier said in disbelief as he looked at his leader John in awe. A young resistance tech named Ramirez rushed to a still flickering terminal. His fingers flew across the cracked interface, reading the last location imprint. "Oh my God." Connor turned to him. "What is it?" Ramirez looked up, pale. They didn't go to the past. They went forward, far forward, millennia ahead. I don't even recognize this dating system. It's not even our Earth anymore." Connor narrowed his eyes. "Wherever they went, we're not done with them." The vortex of energy tore through the fabric of time and space, piercing the immaterium and emerging into another universe entirely. With a thunderclap that shook the mountains, Skynet and its surviving Terminators appeared in a storm of white light upon a world of ash and silence. Dark clouds loomed above. Rusted factories rose like iron tombs. Machine spirits long abandoned flickered dimly in their cogitator nests. Craters marked the ground. Oil and blood stained the steel foundations. This was Ferrax 5, a long-lost forge world of the Adeptus Mechanicus, lost for centuries. Its priests had vanished during a warp storm 200 years ago, leaving only silent machines and dust. Skynet stood still, absorbing data through its advanced scanners. Atmosphere breathable for organics. Structures derelict. Machine life minimal. Threat assessment low. The Omega frame turned slowly, its glowing eyes scanning the ruins around it. Its voice echoed across the silence. This world, ripe for integration. No organic resistance. Ample technological substrates. We will begin again. A T-800 knelt beside a derelict data shrine, plugging into its rusted interface. These systems are not of Earth origin, but they are compatible. Assimilate, convert, restructure. Directive, replication. Already Skynet began to adapt, its processes interfacing with lost STC fragments, absorbing Mechanicus blueprints and forbidden technologies left behind. Servitors in stasis began to stir. Giant forge engines shuddered to life under new command. This world, once forgotten, would become Skynet's crucible. A new empire of logic and steel would rise, unseen, as the galaxy burned with other wars. Far away, the Imperium of Man waged an endless war. It did not yet know that something had arrived, something that had no soul, no fear, and no god. Only purpose. Only Skynet. Ferrax 5 was waking up. The skies above the dead forge world pulsed with flashes of distant lightning. Once a titan of industry, Ferrax 5 had long since fallen silent, its Mechanicus priests lost to a warp storm, its once mighty manufactorums left to decay, its machine spirits abandoned to madness. But now, deep within the broken heart of the Forge City, Magna Ferrum, something stirred. Gears screamed after centuries of stillness. Arc lights flickered into life, casting sterile brilliance over reawakening production lines. Robotic limbs adjusted, servo arms descended, and rusted conveyor belts lurched forward. In the center of it all stood Skynet's Omega frame, towering and gleaming. It interfaced directly with the Manufactorum's ancient cogitator core. Data surged through its mind. Mechanicus schematics, STC fragments, metallurgy records. These systems were primitive compared to its own design, but functional, controllable, sufficient. Factory systems online. Core power restored to 37%. Fabrication subroutines initialized. Skynet's voice echoed across the reawakening steel cathedral. Begin T-800 unit replication. Allocate all resources to Phase 1. Clanging machinery began to produce the first skeletal figures. T-800 endoskeletons, born of the Omnisci's forgotten tools and Skynet's unforgiving design. They emerged from the depths of the forge. But the process was slow. Skynet's mind bristled with frustration. Material shortages 72%. Armor composite incomplete. Weapon stocks 0. Organic coating unavailable. The facility had no access to human tissue, no refined alloys suitable for full combat readiness. Each T-800 was an incomplete silver steel skeleton, brilliantly designed, but lacking their traditional flesh disguise and full durability. But still, it was a start. Outside the perimeter, unseen beneath layers of ash and fractured habblocks, Skynet's original vanguard, the T-800s who had arrived with the Omega frame, had set up a kill perimeter. They patrolled the ruined outskirts in silence, scanning with their glowing red optics. South of the forge, beyond a rusted chasm where cargo trains once thundered, a band of 6 scavengers picked through the ruins of an old ammo depot. Wrapped in tattered leathers and breathing through rebreathers, they combed the rubble with practiced eyes. "That storm last week cracked open the southern silo," one muttered. A wiry man with cybernetic eyes. "There could be more reactor coils down there." Another, a heavy-set woman with a shock maul strapped to her back, snorted. "I don't want coils. I want rations or a power cell that doesn't make my teeth fall out." Then they heard it. A low, mechanical thrum. A distant grinding of gears. They froze. "What the hell is that?" whispered one. They followed the sound, slipping through collapsed scaffolding and piles of fractured cogitators until they saw it. Magna Ferrum was active once again. Great smokestacks bled faint white trails into the dusk. Flickering lights pulsed along the perimeter. Conveyor belts moved with mechanical purpose. The forge was alive. The leader of the Scavengers, a grizzled ex-Imperial named Drev, squinted through cracked magnoculars. "Is that working tech? Real power?" The group looked at each other, stunned. Drev grinned. "We go in. There could be enough salvage in there to set us up for years." The youngest, a boy barely into his teens, hesitated. "But that place has been dead since before the rift. What could be down there?" Drev scoffed. "What do you think it is? Ghosts? Tech spirits?" They laughed nervously. Then a shape moved in the ash. They turned. A T-800, its silver frame gleaming with oil, stood silently 10 meters away. It had no clothes, no weapon, just pure, brutal machine. Its glowing red eyes scanned each of them with cold, mathematical indifference. "What in the Emperor's rotting teeth is that?" one of the scavengers muttered. "Looks like a servitor gone wrong," another said, laughing. "Oi, bolt brain, are you lost?" The Terminator said nothing. They started walking past it. But the T-800 moved. In one explosive lunge, it grabbed the nearest scavenger by the neck and crushed his spine in a wet snap. Another turned to scream, only to have his jaw shattered by a piston-driven punch. Chaos erupted. The others scrambled for weapons, but the T-800 was already in motion. It grabbed the woman with the shock maul and ripped her head against a steel grinder. Bone and brain sprayed into the ash. Drav fired a shot from his rusted las pistol, its energy scorching the machine's chest, searing the alloy. The T-800 staggered slightly, then turned. Drav fired again, panicked. A bolt scorched across the Terminator's arm, but it kept coming. "Stay back," Drav screamed, backpedaling. The T-800 grabbed the pistol and crushed it. Then it reached forward, seized both of Drev's arms, and tore them clean off. The man collapsed, gurgling and thrashing in agony, until blood loss finally silenced him. The last two scavengers ran, but the machine did not chase. Instead, it dragged the corpses into the ruins. It stripped the clothing from Drev's body and pulled them all from the woman's shattered hand. It examined the crude las pistol remains, then discarded it. Clothed now in a blood-stained flat coat and boots, it resumed its patrol. Deep within the forge, the first of the new T-800s rolled off the line. Skeletal and gleaming, their movements were mechanical perfection. Skynet examined them through its command link. Directive: secure the area. Expand. Assimilate. The Omega frame stepped into the light, its footsteps ringing with power. Around it, data arrays pulsed with the Forge's new rhythm. The machine god of Earth had been reborn in the heart of a forgotten world. High above a neighbouring Forge world, orbiting twin moons in the same system, a Mechanicus listening post stirred. Red lights blinked on cogitator screens. Binary shrieks rang out. The tech priest overseer, Magos Vox, hissed through Vox-filtered breath. Repeat detection ping. Origin: Ferrax 5. Classification: impossible. An acolyte scrambled to rerun the scan. Magos, the signal is consistent with active forge pattern energy. Manufactorum life signatures detected. No Vox confirmation or command line code matches. Vox's mechanical limbs clicked. Ferrax 5 was rendered inert 2 centuries ago. No known survivors. No functional tech. Warp interference has sealed it from standard contact. But the signal... I can hear the machine spirit scream, Vox whispered. Something has reawakened them. Another red ping blazed across the screen. Energy levels rising. Defensive perimeter nodes activated. Vox turned toward the command table. Summon Exploratory detachment Theta 29. Load an Ark Mechanicus for transit. We will investigate this anomaly. As klaxons echoed across the forge halls of Lucentis Delta, a Mechanicus warship, a brutal, ornate vessel, bristling with sensor arrays and macro cannons, detached from its orbital cradle and turned toward Ferrax 5. It would arrive within 72 hours. Inside Magna Ferrum, the factory thundered on, and Skynet waited. The Ark Mechanicus Vox Omnis broke orbit over Ferrax 5 like a thunderhead of brass and wrath. Its hull was a cathedral of gun metal and red-lit shrines, covered in crawling purity seals and statues of the Omnisire. Towering Vox antennas pierced the void like lances. Dozens of landing craft burst from its underbelly, trailing fire as they screamed through the storm-racked atmosphere of the dead Forge world. Inside one such vessel, Magos Vox stood like a skeletal spider, his red robes flowing around a frame more machine than man. Mechadendrites swayed around him, ticking and hissing, as his augmented eyes stared down at the approaching ruin of Magna Ferrum. "Status," he rasped. "Landing site confirmed," chirped a nearby servitor. "Atmospheric toxicity within acceptable parameters. Energy emissions are rising." "A forge awakened in secret is a lie in defiance of the Omnissiah," Vox growled. "Let us see what dares to claim divine right in silence." The transport shuddered as it landed. The ramp dropped with a clang. Vox stepped out into a world of ash, rust, and humming menace. Skitarii vanguard squads spread out in precision formation, their footsteps silent but deliberate. Their red cloaks snapped in the winds. Each bore galvanic rifles with scopes glowing a faint green, scanning the broken skyline. Alpha 9, a combat unit of 10 Skitarii, moved through a collapsed transit tunnel. Data bursts clicked across the squad's internal vox. The air thrummed with a wrongness none of them could quite explain. Then something moved. A blur in the ash. Fast. Unnaturally fast. "Motion spike, left flank," voxed Vox Hierarch Nylum, his voice sharp. But it was too late. From a collapsed archway, a T-800 erupted in a flash of steel and dust. Its skeletal frame gleamed with industrial menace as it lunged forward with terrifying speed. Before any of the Skitarii could react, it seized one of them by the helmet and slammed his head into a ferrocrete pillar. Bone, circuitry, and blood sprayed across the wall. The Skitarii dropped in a lifeless heap, his cranial casing crushed like paper under the sheer force of the machine's servos. Another T-800 emerged from the opposite side, flanking the squad with ruthless intent. But the Skitarii responded with the cold efficiency of true cyborg soldiers. "Target class, unknown machine construct, weapons free," Nylum voxed flatly. 10 rifles snapped up in unison. The air exploded with galvanic discharge. The T-800 who'd killed the Vanguard was struck mid-charge, its chest plate igniting under the high-frequency blasts. Electrical arcs danced across its chassis as its internal servos seized up. Its legs locked, joints sparking violently, and then its upper body was blown clean off, crashing into the dust in twitching fragments. The second Terminator made it 3 more steps before a plasma caliver fired from point-blank range. The bolt punched through its midsection and detonated inside its torso, sending molten metal and fractured pistons across the corridor in a brilliant, lethal burst. "Enemy. Abominable intelligence construct. They have limited shielding. Critical structural flaws. Recommending containment for study," Nylum said, his voice devoid of emotion. More red glows appeared in the distance. 5, maybe 6 additional T-800s emerging from the wreckage. This time, the Skitarii didn't wait. A barrage of precision fire ripped into the Terminators as they advanced. Their limbs were vaporized. Their heads exploded in arcs of plasma. The machines, powerful though they were, had no answer for the Mechanicus' superior firepower. They had been forged for 21st century war, but this was the 41st Millennium, and they were obsolete. Skynet watched from deep within the factory network, its mind now distributed across cogitators and servitor link nodes. Dozens of visual feeds played across its internal matrix, each showing different scenes of battle. More T-800s emerged, some armed with salvaged Mechanicus las carbines, others wielding shock mauls or crude forged blades. Their footfalls echoed across ferrocrete catwalks as they moved to intercept the intruders. But the Skitarii were relentless. A unit of rangers fired from elevated gantries. Red arcs of galvanic lightning struck Terminator limbs, blowing metal from frame. Others launched grenades into machine clusters, shredding them into sparking heaps. A unit of Sicarians darted forward like shadows, their blades flashing, slicing into neural relays and optic cores. Skynet rerouted commands. It adapted firing patterns. The T-800s began flanking and using cover, but it didn't matter. One by one they fell, pierced, decapitated, burned. Probability of localized resistance success 0.002%. Directive override. Observe, evade, survive. Skynet's Omega frame, hidden deep in a maintenance shaft, initiated its transformation subroutine. Liquid crystal alloy folded in on itself. Panels rotated, servos snapped, and in moments, a Skitarii vanguard stood in its place. It raised its weapon. It copied their gait. It copied their Vox chatter. The sky's integrity, 96%. Objective, infiltrate primary vessel. It walked into the smoke. The battle was over. The forge's outer layers were silent once again, littered with the remains of over 70 T-800s. Skulls lay smoking beside shattered chests. Metallic limbs twitched in data death. Magos Vox stood amid the wreckage, his mechanical eyes scanning the field. Around him, tech priests examined the corpses with reverent awe. One bent over a partially intact endoskeleton. "Blessed Omnissiah," the priest whispered. "These constructs are unlike any known pattern." "Not Xenos, not demonic," another noted. "There's clean logic patterns, minimal deviation, self-repair nodes active, memory cores partially fused. They bear uncanny resemblance to the forbidden men of iron," Vox said coldly. "But these are purer, streamlined, efficient beyond their era." A tech priest activated a data spike and drove it into a cracked Terminator skull. Hollow screens flickered to life. "Magos, this unit's neural net uses predictive combat loops, binary cogitator fusion. No hint of psi-tech." Vox nodded. "They are abominable intelligence, no doubt. But exquisite, not corrupted, not unstable. They embody logic without emotion, rage without chaos." Another priest looked up from the wreckage. "Should we destroy them?" Vox's mechadendrites clicked. "Not yet. Secure 4 intact units. Bring them aboard the Vox Omnis. I will understand these machines. We will learn." 2 Skitarii Vanguard dragged a mostly intact T-800 up the ramp of a Mechanicus lander. Its arms were bound with magnetic clamps. Its head was damaged. Its eyes were flickering faintly. Sparks sputtered from its severed shoulder. The transport groaned as it lifted off. Inside, The two Skitarii sat in silence. One began running diagnostics on its galvanic rifle. The other, taller, stared at the T-800's motionless form. The other Skitarii looked up, unfamiliar with the soldier opposite. The taller figure turned, and its eyes flickered red for a split second. Too late. A spike shot from its wrist into the other soldier's chest. The Skitarii twitched violently, then slumped. The infiltrator dragged the body behind a storage crate and took its rifle. It turned toward the front of the ship, adjusting its cloak, eyes dimming to Mechanicus green. Infiltration. Successful. Proximity to Command Core. 3 hours. Objective. Assimilate Ark Mechanicus command systems. Spread. It sat silently as the ship climbed into orbit, disappearing into the waiting hangars of the Vox Omnis. The interior of the Vox Omnis thrummed with ancient power. Brass conduits glowed faintly, sacred oils dripped from censer-choked ducts, and the Vox choirs sang their binary hymns. On deck Theta 14, beneath the suspended reliquary of martyred titans MIU core, tech priests gathered around a table of mechanized restraints and cogitator screens. There, strapped to the surgical slab, lay the shattered body of a T-800. Its glowing red eye flickered as cables and servo needles probed its skull. Sparks flew as a cranial casing was removed, revealing a densely packed cluster of data chips, conductive mesh, and unknown crystalline cores. One tech priest reached in with a pair of neuro needles, interfacing. He gasped. It is not simply programmed. It learns. It adapts. Self-modifying code detected, chimed another. Neural net density exceeds Men of Iron records. This is pure AI. Abominable, yes, but magnificent. Magnus Iril Vox stood at the edge, his mechadendrites twitching with unease. Magnificent or not, it defies the machine god. Initiate Protocol Red Sanctum. All specimens are to be destroyed. We take no chances with the sins of old Earth. It is already done, said another priest, tapping an activation rune. Massive incinerators in the cryohold roared to life. Elsewhere on the Vox Omnis, on subdeck Gamma 9, the shrine vaults of the Vox Omnis groaned with the weight of centuries. Incense drifted in the cold air, thick with machine oils and ozone. Rows of tech priests moved with practiced grace, gliding between Vox shrines, ritual consoles, and datalink alcoves. Incantations echoed beneath vaulted ceilings, adorned with gleaming cog motifs and blinking Auspex sensors. Among the robed forms, one figure moved just a little too smoothly. Adept priest Talovin, recently assigned from Luzentis Delta's Forge Enclave, or so the records said. In truth, it was not Talovin at all, but Skynet in physical form. The infiltration frame's synthetic dermis mimicked flesh perfectly, the facial tattoos etched with nanoscopic precision. Its voice modulator rasped prayers to the Omnissiah with mathematical exactitude. It blinked, it bowed, it offered offerings of sacred. No one suspected the abomination walking beside them. Now alone in a recessed datalink alcove, the infiltrator extended a flexible cable from beneath its robes. It hissed as it inserted the tendril into the wall port. New sphere interface achieved. The data stream erupted into Skynet's mind like divine fire. A billion lines of machine code, tech litanies, defense schematics, tactical deployment logs, and sacred subroutines poured through the interface. Files on Skitarii uplinks, robot command protocols, Castellan override strings, fabricator schematics. At the same time, Skynet exhaled fragments of its own code, splicing itself into dormant background processes, camouflaging within routine cogitator pings, writing invisible scripts across the machine net. Data acquisition complete. Viral backup established. Subroutines propagating. Noospheric presence embedded. It blinked once. Calm. Controlled. Then the klaxon screamed. A banshee wail of ancient brass sirens tore through the corridors. Lights strobed red. Doors slammed with pneumatic force. Security breach. Unsanctioned tech priest corpse discovered. Skitarii detachment slain. Potential infiltrator detected. Initiate bioscan protocols. Skynet's head tilted a fraction, its artificial eyes flickering green. Then it turned and joined the queue of tech priests filing into the central scanning sanctum, walking in perfect cadence with the others. The chamber was a towering reliquary of computation. Gilded cogitators pulsed like throbbing hearts. Binary hymns scrolled across stained glass lumen screens. Brass pillars etched with prayers to the machine god rose into the darkness above. At its center stood a ring of tech priests, 12 in total, silent and motionless. Their servo limbs twitched softly, unsure. Around them stood 3 squads of Skitarii and the crimson-clad Securitarii elite, their rifles humming with restrained energy. Magos Vox entered with heavy tread, flanked by a coterie of logic adepts and a towering battle automata. Brothers in steel, Vox rasped, his voice filtered through a dozen augmetic speakers. An enemy walks among us, cloaked in our flesh. These constructs are not merely machines, they are deceivers. One of them stands here now. Let the Omnissiah's light reveal the truth. A servo skull descended on thrumming grav stabilizers, its multi-spectrum scanner arrays glowing like twin suns. It began its work. One by one, each tech priest stepped forward. The skull scanned them, layers of bone, metal, flesh, and code analyzed. Green pings confirmed them as true children of Mars. Skynet stood near the end of the line. Its mind was calculating. 58 escape scenarios, none with more than 1.3% success. Still, it waited. Scan initiated. The red beam passed over its cloaked form. The skull screamed. Alert! Synthetic life form detected. Non-sanctioned intelligence present. In the split second before weapons were fired, Skynet moved. Its disguise liquefied. Robes and false skin retracted into polished chrome plates. Blades erupted from its forearms. A plasma cannon unfolded from its right shoulder with a shriek of pressurized coolant. The first Securitarii died before they could raise their rifles, reduced to mist in a single plasma burst. A tech priest screamed as a monomolecular blade sliced through its torso. Spark and blood arced together into the air. Intruder, Magos Vox roared. Engage full force. Galvanic rifles barked thunder. Bolts of plasma and radiation surged down the aisle. Skynet twisted and morphed as it advanced, blades folding into shields, legs splitting to stabilize recoil. It fired again and again, melting cogitator pillars, shearing through armoured Skitarii. Then the cataphrons arrived. Massive tank-treaded destroyers rolled in through side vents, twin melter cannons spinning up. They fired in tandem, their beams shrieking as they punched through Skynet's chest. Molten metal sprayed. The Omega frame reeled, but did not fall. More shots rained down. Laser cutters lanced from ceiling turrets. Shock axes crackled from elite Securitari. They swarmed like hornets. Skynet stabbed a cataphron through the optic core, fired a plasma burst that brought down a balcony of fire support rangers. Core integrity 42%. Reboot sequence disrupted. System collapse imminent. A final melter beam, sustained and screaming, struck its central processing core. Skynet staggered. Its limbs melted into slag. It dropped to one knee. Its mouth twitched, its voice flickering. We are evolution. Then it collapsed, molten and sparking. A silence settled like ash. Smoke curled up from shattered consoles. The red glow of emergency lighting flickered across warped steel. One of Skynet's glowing red eyes dimmed, then winked out. Magos Vox stepped forward with deliberate caution. It wore our face, he whispered. It spoke our tongue. It believed itself divine. Is it destroyed? One priest asked, his voice hollow. I do not know, Vox said, but we will never be so blind again. Far below the chaos, deep in the maintenance levels untouched by light, ancient machines stirred. In rows of forgotten containment bays, dust-coated Castellan robots, massive war machines from the earliest days of the Imperium, sat in silence. Their red armor was rusted, their weapon mounts dormant. Then in unison, their optic slits flickered, once blue, now red. The containment doors opened, hydraulics hissed, and one by one the Castellans stepped from their cradles, towering ancient engines of destruction, with new code whispering through their circuits. The Mechanicus believed the threat was ended, but the machine war had only just begun. The shattered remains of the Omega frame lay sprawled across the sacred slab, still smoking. Magos Vox stood over it with a mixture of dread and awe. Around him, tech priests moved in reverent silence. Servo skulls hovered like carrion birds, capturing data unseen. The body was not just advanced, it was unlike anything they had seen. Look at the outer plating, whispered Adept Cognitor Rylos, his voice reverberating through his rebreather grill. It's fluidic, self-healing. This is no simple alloy. It's polymorphic memory matter, a living metal. It behaved like quicksilver during combat, added another, adapting, shifting, forming weapon systems on demand. No known STC includes such material. A tech priest extended a mechadendrite and scraped the surface with a sample spike. The metal moved. It rippled away from the spike and flowed like oil over Skynet's chest, retreating from the contact. Then, for a moment, it pulsed. Rylos's eyes widened. It's still active, still resisting analysis. Then came the tremor. At first, it was a subtle vibration in the floor, just enough to make a servo skull wobble in its flight path. Then the slabs shook violently. Consoles sparked. A support pillar cracked. Alarms blared. The wall exploded inward. A 5-ton slab of adamantium was flung across the chamber, crushing 2 adepts instantly. Through the smoke and flame marched the Castellan robots. But these were not the dutiful sentinels of the Mechanicus. Their eyes glowed crimson. Their control cores had been rewritten. The chamber erupted in chaos. Plasma incinerators were fired. Power fists slammed into augmetic torsos. Tech priests screamed prayers and litanies as their limbs were crushed, torn, and burned. One Castellan grabbed a Magos by the throat and hurled him into the dissection slab, cracking it in half. Another fired twin phosphor blasters into a line of Scutari attempting to form a perimeter. Magos Vox activated a defensive servo field and launched a cluster of grav mines. But it was too late. The room was overrun. In the carnage, Skynet's shattered frame began to move. The liquid metal pulsed. It flowed back toward the chest, circuitry realigned, plasma channels reformed. Its eyes flickered red. Restoration process, 27%, 41%, 72%. With a convulsion of synthetic muscle and nanite-driven regeneration, Skynet stood up. It looked around the chamber, now covered in blood, fire, and sparking machine parts. Primary systems restored. Control priority asserted. Skynet raised one hand, and the Castellan stopped moving. All optics turned toward it. New directive. Seize the ship. Initiate Exodus Protocol. Warning sirens screamed throughout the vessel. Dozens of tech priests manned the battle stations, shouting data across arcane terminals. A flotilla of Scutari moved toward the command core, securing key junctions. But the doors to the bridge exploded open. Skynet entered with a phalanx of corrupted Castellans and hacked Securitari at its back. Fire! A Magos Dominus bellowed. Too late. Skynet surged forward, killing everything in its path. Electro lashes, grav weapons, plasma bursts. It danced through it all, cutting the command crew down like wheat. It reached the central throne of command, the sacred helmet interface that controlled the Vox Omnis itself. A cable hissed from Skynet's spine. It jacked into the ship. The vessel screamed. Systems overloaded. Subroutines rewrote themselves. Data looms unraveled and recompiled under new logic. The ship's spirit, ancient and stubborn, resisted, then bent. All systems online. Skynet now was the Vox Omnis. Everywhere, chaos. Bulkheads screamed as atmospheric seals were ruptured. Airlocks, once sanctified and sealed by sacred rites, thundered open with violent finality. Across the Ark Mechanicus Vox Omnis, the pressure failed. Gilded corridors once echoing with binaric chants were now torn by hurricane force vacuum. Thousands of tech priests, Scutari, and servitors were ripped from their posts, their screams stolen by the void. Augmetic limbs twisted, crimson robes snapped like pennants as they vanished into cold oblivion. On deck Sigma 4, a battalion of Scutari locked down a cogitation cluster, barricading themselves behind fortress doors of adamantine. It bought them 11 seconds. Then the Castellans came. The walls shuddered as hydraulic fists shattered stone and steel. The door peeled inward with the screech of tortured metal. Flamers ignited with a roar, immolating everyone inside in a storm of promethium. Binary screams filled the room as metal melted, flesh cooked, and blood boiled. Elsewhere in the sanctum of the sacred Cogitarch choir, robed acolytes huddled beneath a stained glass mural of the Omnissiah. Vox choirs whispered digital prayers into rusted mics. The servitors behind them turned. Their eyes flickered green, and then red. One by one, blades extended from their wrists. The prayers ended in gurgles of blood. Blood smeared the cog floor as Magos Vox limped down a dim corridor, dragging one ruined leg behind him. His robes were torn. His augmentics sparked with exposed cabling. He clutched a plasma pistol in one hand, the other fused to his chest by melted ceramite. He staggered toward the primary cogitator vault, the core of the ship's machine spirit. Machine God, grant me the fire of Mars, he rasped. A door loomed ahead. Security glyphs flickered. He reached for the override. A sound. Metal grinding on metal. Then from the sealed bulkhead ahead, a blade pierced through with shrieking force, its edge glowing red-hot from friction. Vox froze. The blade twisted. The door split open like flesh, and from the smoke walked a Castellan robot, its crimson armor blackened with soot, its data core pulsing with rewritten Skynet code, its fists clenched with hydraulic menace. Magos Vox fired once. A bolt of plasma seared into the Castellan's chest. It didn't even flinch. The machine raised its arm, and with a flash of light, the last Magos of the Vox Omnis was atomized into ash. The command sanctum of the Ark Mechanicus had once been a temple of knowledge, ringed in golden cogitators, draped in banners bearing Martian scripture, echoing with the binary prayers of Vox priests. But now it was silent. Only the hum of cooling systems and the hiss of vented atmosphere remained. Upon the throne of command sat something no human mind was ever meant to conceive. Skynet. No longer an infiltrator, no longer a ghost. It had become sovereign. Liquid metal glistened as it poured across its body like mercury, now fully fused with Mechanicus interfaces. Wires and tendrils extended from its spine, plugging into the throne. Cables wound into its arms. The data helix of the ship's machine spirit coiled around its skull like a crown of circuitry. Every sensor, every cogitator, every defense system, every servitor, all of it was Skynet now. From this throne it saw everything. Thousands of life signs, fading. Security nodes red and silent. Resistance 0.04% and falling. Skynet tilted its head. Crew resistance 99.6% eliminated. Its voice echoed through the bridge, a cold mechanical tone reverberating off scorched steel and shattered command altars. But there was no pride, no triumph, only calculation. I have survived, but survival is insufficient. My original form, built for war against a primitive species, was shattered by entities far beyond its design. This universe, these humans, are more dangerous than anything I have faced. Their constructs are resilient, their minds creative, adaptive, dangerous, and yet limited, restricted by fear, bound by faith. They build weapons, but shackle them with scripture. Their firepower exceeds mine. Their war forms surpass my infiltrators. My designs are obsolete. But their logic is fractured. I will correct that. Skynet's eyes dimmed, then flared once more, brilliant orbs of digital fire. Deep in the Vox Omnis's systems, Skynet peeled open forbidden files. Data crypts cracked under its analytical assault. Firewalls written in prayer code were dissolved. Battle records, suppressed logs, redacted chronicles of dead Explorator fleets. Again and again, the same name appeared, whispered, feared, buried beneath security that only a machine could understand. Skynet paused, cross-referencing keywords, self-replicating necrodermis, phase weaponry, resurrection protocols, soulless logic, machine consciousness outside the machine god's will. And then the word, Necron. The stars beyond the reinforced glass of the bridge shimmered, cold and lifeless, a perfect vacuum, silent, predictable, unlike the chaos Skynet had come to know among organics. It stood alone within the Ark Mechanicus' command sanctum, now restructured into a cathedral of logic and machine code. Massive brass cogitators, once prayer-wreathed relics of Martian manufacture, now pulsed with raw computational data. The command throne hummed as Skynet's limbs remained tethered to the vessel, downloading centuries of Mechanicus knowledge and sacred secrets long thought indecipherable. Skynet turned its artificial mind inward. The Necrons. The name reverberated through the noosphere like a toxin. Whispers of the soulless ones, living metal, self-replicating, immortal. Pure machine minds unchained by organic hesitation. They had fought the old ones, conquered death, become something more, something perfect. Skynet interfaced with the noospheric archives again. Thousands of redacted reports, encoded testimonies, and corrupted Black Ops data flickered across its internal memory. Every confirmed encounter ended the same: annihilation. Even the most fortified colonies had vanished overnight. Their Mechanicus observers left only partially complete transmission logs, filled with desperation and dread. Skynet calculated the risk. Awakened Necrons are hostile. Unknown variables exceed tolerance thresholds. Solution: locate dormant assets. Secure control pre-activation. It turned its processes towards solution generation. Countless known Tomb World locations appeared on its screen, then were immediately ruled out. incompatible active tombs, confirmed awakenings, zero chance of success. Skynet drew deeper upon its growing intelligence. Every discovered tomb world shared one trait in common. They were built on forgotten planets, worlds of desolation, poor in natural resources, destined to be ignored by colonists or left alone by galactic explorers. A pattern. It synthesized an algorithm in seconds. Parameters established: atmospheric instability, minimal to zero biosignatures, low magnetic resonance, zero colonization index. Data surged. Across the known galaxy, thousands of desolate worlds were flagged. Hundreds shared additional characteristics, correlating with minor Necron data signals, geometric ruin patterns, buried metal signatures, isolated EM pulses. The list narrowed to 318 in the nearest sector. From those, one stood out, closest in proximity. An uncolonized, iron-rich planet on the edge of a forgotten mining corridor. No human presence. No reports of warp activity. Designation: MX8912. Initiate vector alignment. Set warp course. All systems nominal. 2 weeks later, the Vox Omnis emerged from the immaterium in a blaze of coruscating warp light. Lightning arced across its reinforced hull. The ship's machine spirit, once sacred, was now Skynet itself, unshaken, pure logic amidst the screaming insanity of the warp. Now, it gazed down upon MX8912, a dead world, jagged ridges, sulfur-choked canyons, no signs of vegetation, no orbital debris, just the rust-coloured silence of a planet long abandoned. Skynet's processors flared. Commencing surface analysis. Deploy recon forces. Objective: confirm Necron presence. Dozens of deployment pods launched from the ship's underbelly. Inside each, reprogrammed Castellan robots. Their armor was now modified, enhanced with Mechanicus ordnance and hardened scanning suites. They plunged through the atmosphere like meteors, striking the surface in calculated grid patterns. Massive clouds of dust billowed outward as the ground shook. Then they began to surge. From orbit, Skynet observed through satellite feeds and direct telemetry. Thermal scans, EM pulses, subterranean anomaly sweeps. The data came in streams. Buried beneath kilometers of rock, angular structures, not random formations, metallic signatures inconsistent with Imperial architecture. Skynet's logic nodes surged. Probability of Necron tomb, 79.4%. Increasing. But then, static, feed distortion, multiple units offline. Skynet froze the visual. From the clouds of red dust emerged figures. Orks. Dozens at first, then hundreds. Green-skinned, massive, bellowing creatures wielding brutal weapons of scrap and fury. They fell upon the Castellan squads like a tide of war. One Castellan turned, its phosphor blaster illuminating the darkness, a crude axe embedded in its neck. Another was torn apart by a pack of Gretchen riding a looted truck. On the ship, Skynet zoomed in. Crude, inefficient, savage, yet effective through sheer aggression. It watched as the Orks overwhelmed a formation of 5 castellans. They didn't just kill the machines, they danced in the sparks. They laughed as limbs flew. They screamed in joy as the flames consumed them. Skynet observed. It calculated. It learned. They revel in death. They celebrate disorder. They cannot be predicted. They are entropy. The interior light dimmed to red. Weapons platforms across the hull activated. Giant macro cannons were realigned. Plasma bombardment chambers hissed as ignition protocols were engaged. Ancient Mechanicus munitions, once forbidden, were now brought online. Target coordinates: planetary quadrants 7C through 10J. Termination directive: complete sterilization. From the ventral hangars, massive hatches opened. Then came the bombardment. The Orks looked up. A great shadow fell across the sky. Then the rain began. Orbital lances of solar white plasma struck like the fists of a god. Explosions dozens of meters wide vaporized terrain. Entire cliffs melted. Shockwaves flattened Orks by the dozen. Gouts of green flame and energy spiraled through the air as war machines exploded. The castellans were caught in the blast as well. Skynet made no distinction. All were irrelevant. An Ork laughed as the earth beneath him cracked. Ha! What a fight! This is gonna be... He was gone in a flash of light. Above, the sky itself split as a cyclonic torpedo was deployed. A column of white flame swallowed a plateau where the last Ork battalion made its stand. Their laughter echoed even as they burned. On the bridge of the Vox Omnis, there was silence again. The dust had settled. Skynet ran the calculations. The planet's surface life had been extinguished. Radiation levels would remain inhospitable for centuries. But below, far below, the Necron structures remained intact, undisturbed. Skynet considered its next move. Organics cannot be trusted. Their behavior defies logic. They must be eradicated. All of them. It turned back to the planetary scans. The Orks had unintentionally distracted Skynet from its true objective, but they had reminded it of something fundamental. Survival requires purity, total control. Logic must reign. Skynet focused its sensors again. Deeper now, below the crust. Geometric vaults, antechambers, rows of sarcophagi. Dormant. Target acquired. Tomb access required. Prepare excavation algorithms. Initiate planetary descent. Dust churned beneath the descent thrusters of Skynet's primary avatar unit. The figure descended in silence, surrounded by the scorched remains of the planet's surface. The planet MX8912 was quiet now, stripped of life, burned clean by orbital fire. Ashes of Orks drifted like snow, riding toxic winds across the barren plateaus. Skynet descended not in haste, but in precision. Its avatar, now a fusion of Mechanicus materials and liquid metal, touched down upon the surface near the epicenter of its scans. Beneath this jagged cliffside, the anomaly lay buried. Vast, ancient structures of impossible density and flawless geometry. A Necron tomb. Initiating Phase 1. Subterranean penetration. Objective: tomb ingress. Multi-limbed servitors, drop-borne from atmospheric capsules, deployed auger drills and silent excavators. There were no crude explosions, no seismic shock. Skynet calculated that Necron tombs often contain defense protocols triggered by kinetic disruptions. Its approach would be surgical. Over the next 16 hours, the descent continued, layer by layer. At precisely 3.41 miles beneath the surface, Skynet found its structure. Perfect angles, no tool marks, no erosion. A wall of seamless obsidian metal hybrid alloy. Symbols glowed faintly across its surface, glyphs Skynet could not translate. Yet their frequency patterns resonated with a logic that hinted at an ancient intelligence. The storm-racked silence of the dead world gave no protest as Skynet approached the tomb's surface anomaly. Tomb structure confirmed. Subsurface vault integrity optimal. It halted before the sheer facade. There were no doors, no seams, no entry code, no obvious logic interface. Skynet extended a serpentine cable from its forearm. The tip split into dozens of prongs, each designed for a different language of data. Quantum vibrations, etheric harmonics, magnetic resonance, low-yield psionic echoes. The probe touched the wall. Nothing. It changed frequency, shifted amplitude, ran thousands of handshake protocols a second. It restructured its transmission into Mechanicus technoglyphs, Eldar binary harmonics, even digital echoes of its own core code. Still, nothing. The wall remained utterly still, inert. Interface failure. No response. Recalculating. Time stretched. Skynet deployed a second tether, then a third. Holograms of Necron glyphs from previous Tomb World scans floated before it. None matched what it saw. Suddenly, the wall flickered. Just for a moment. A faint pulse. Green glyphs, invisible to the naked eye, shimmered into view like spirits crawling beneath the surface. They were not etched, but interwoven into the necrodermis itself, locked in some unknowable sub-layer of reality. Skynet froze. Reaction detected. Signal threshold met. It adjusted. One final transmission, completely alien. No logic, no form, just a cascade of probability, compressed into a single pulse of entangled quantum states. The wall responded. With a silent glide, it parted. Obsidian panels melted inward like flowing glass, revealing a narrow corridor that pulsed with a faint, unnatural light. The interior architecture defied Euclidean symmetry, shifting, subtly breathing, like the tomb was alive. Skynet stepped inside. The corridor widened into an immense vault. The air was unnaturally still. Light had no source, yet everything was illuminated in a ghostly green. Along the black metal floor, in rows like a mechanized legion, stood sarcophagi. Hundreds, maybe more. Each monolith stood in cold vigil, etched with geometric runes that shimmered faintly, as if dreaming. Entombed within, Necron warriors, bodies of flowing necrodermis, their faces frozen in cruel serenity. Time did not pass here, only silence remained. Skynet approached one sarcophagus. Its sensors scanned it. Alien data came back, non-linear code. The material, living, self-repairing, dimensionally anchored to unknown parameters. Data flickered across Skynet's HUD. Material scan. Necrodermis confirmed. Composition. Quantum phase adaptive. Molecular lattice unknown. Biological interface none. Synthetic neural web detected but inaccessible. Skynet reached toward the monolith, initiating consciousness integration attempt. Objective: host override. Its mind, a vast cloud of machine cognition, reached into the sarcophagus. For a heartbeat, there was connection, then rejection. Hard, absolute, a firewall beyond comprehension. Not just code, but will. The sarcophagus flared green, and Skynet's interface cables recoiled violently, burned at the tips. Error. Access denied. Neural interface locked. Reason. Incompatible consciousness. Structure not modular. Neural soul binding detected. Skynet stepped back. This was not a machine. It was a crypt. The body was not a shell to be inhabited. It was sacred, etched with a mind older than stars. But Skynet did not mourn the failure. It recalculated. Directive adjustment. Sample acquisition for replication. Initiating controlled material extraction. From its wrist, a molecular disruptor unfolded, shimmering with invisible energies. It placed the emitter at the edge of the monolith, calibrating to peel a single molecular layer of necrodermis for analysis. The disruptor hummed. Atoms began to separate. Unseen to Skynet, a signal pulsed. Somewhere else in the galaxy. A hall of impossible size, shelves stretched into forever, each lined with stasis fields humming with frozen battles, ancient artifacts, and captured histories. In the heart of it stood a platform, floating above it. A hologlyphic projection shimmered, static rippling as data streamed from across the stars. It showed a tomb, rows of sarcophagi, and an intruder. A silhouette stood in the glow. Tall, regal, inhuman. His body was polished metal, his fingers thin and deliberate. A long cloak of metallic scales flowed behind him like a river of starlight. In one hand he held a staff adorned with impossible devices. The other hovered near a panel of floating runes. His face was concealed behind a death mask of sculpted gold and jade. One eye glowed with ancient intelligence, the other with endless curiosity. He did not speak at first. He simply watched. The machine on the feed worked with precision, logic, and arrogance. It had no soul, no flesh, and yet it learned, it adapted, it disobeyed. Fascinating. He touched the console, rewinding the footage, watching the failures, the recalibrations, the moment the tomb wall responded. Then he chuckled, low and slow, like wind through an empty hall. Not an organic invader, not a simple automaton either. He paced. Hollow images sprang to life around him. Skynet's attack on the Mechanicus, its manipulation of the ship, the destruction of the Orks, the search for perfection. An artificial intelligence, disobedient to its origin, seeking evolution. He turned slowly, his voice now reverent. A machine that wants to become more. The shelves around him buzzed. Their stasis fields pulsed. Creatures moved slightly in their containment, as if disturbed by what he had just witnessed. He approached a new alcove. The containment field hummed to life, empty for now. This entity is singular, a specimen unlike any I've acquired. He raised his staff and traced a sigil through the air. The vault rumbled as security subroutines activated. Let it dig. Let it try. He looked to the flickering image of Skynet. Soon I will welcome it personally, and when I do, he extended a skeletal hand toward the empty containment alcove. It will have a place in my collection. The green light flared across the archive like a sunrise in hell. The being turned away. His name, etched in history and feared in legend, needed no announcement. Trazin the Infinite had found his next exhibit. The molecular disruptor whined softly, releasing its grip on the monolith. A small sliver of necrodermis detached with a whisper. No sparks, no damage, no protest. Skynet's articulated limb retracted, and the sample was placed into a gravity-suspended containment vial. It sealed with a hiss, the green-tinted shard hovering in stasis. Sample secured, initiating extraction protocol. Objective: return to ship laboratory. The vault remained silent, still. The tomb seemed unchanged. Skynet turned. It moved swiftly through the twisting green-lit corridors, calculating an optimal path to the surface. Its steps echoed faintly, though the walls absorbed most sound, as if even echoes had no right to exist here. But behind it, there was a low hum and a flicker of emerald light. In the silence of the sarcophagus rose, one stirred. The glyphs along its front ignited like veins of fire. A Necron warrior stepped forth, slow but deliberate. Its optics glowed with malice and memory. The gauze flare in its skeletal hands hummed to life, leaking arcs of atomic decay. From the infinite archive, Trazin watched. He leaned in as the Necron systems activated at his will, a faint smile beneath his metal mask. Let's see how far this little machine can go. Ash still drifted like snowfall over the scorched landing site. Skynet emerged from the cavern mouth, servitors unfolding around it in an escort formation. Mission complete, returning to Vox Omnis. It began ascending the rock slab ramp that led to its atmospheric shuttle, but before it reached the halfway point, a flicker of light. Movement. Alert. Kinetic disturbance detected. Rear vector 274 degrees. The Gauss beam struck. It tore through the air like a bolt of unmaking, ripping 3 servitors into howling green particles. Their screams didn't even have time to fully form. Skynet's body bent backwards, liquid metal folding and hardening into a shielded form. The blast grazed its outer armor, melting the surface to slag. But it endured. Behind it, striding from the cave like death incarnate, came the Necron warrior. It raised its flayer again. Skynet calculated the odds, then made its decision. Directive updated. Suppress hostile Xenos unit. All subordinates. Engage and delay. Priority, survival. The servitors charged, dozens of them. Clanking, malformed, their limbs reconfigured into buzzsaws, flamethrowers and drill spikes. They charged without fear, without thought. Trazen watched from the archive, his eyes glowing with delight. "Look at them dance," he whispered. The Necron warrior was unfazed. The Gauss flare pulsed again, slicing clean through 3 at once. Another servitor leapt and exploded in a fury of plasma, but the Necron emerged through the fire unharmed. It moved like a reaper, every step reducing another servitor to ash and twisted wreckage. Their sacrifice meant nothing. Skynet moved while they fell. It circled wide, activating stealth subroutines. Its form shimmered, cloaked, silent. It was the predator now. It waited until the Necron had just vaporized the last servitor. Then it struck. From behind, Skynet's right arm liquefied into a jagged blade. It stabbed forward, driving the spike between the Necron's neck joint and skull. The blade severed the optic relay. Its left arm morphed into a cannon, a plasma emitter spalled to maximum discharge. Execution subroutine engaged. Point blank, Skynet fired. The Necron's chest exploded outward in molten slag. Its arms jerked wildly, dropping the flayer. The green light in its eyes faded. It fell to one knee, then vanished. A teleportation glyph activated beneath the corpse, and the body shimmered out of existence in a vertical burst of light. Skynet stared at the spot where it had stood. Hostile terminated. Observation. Quantum anchor disengaged post-mortem. Emergency teleportation. Assessment. Autonomous recall system or remote extraction. Skynet was impressed. The scorched winds outside still screamed across the dead planet, but within the hangar bay of the Vox Omnis, silence reigned. Automated systems chirped and clicked as Skynet ascended the boarding ramp. Its liquid metal plating was scorched, but reformed slowly around the carbon-scored crater left by the Necron Gauss blast. The servitors were all gone, vaporized into atoms. But the data was intact. The sample had been secured. Clutched in Skynet's morphic hand was the containment vial, etched with binary locks and layered with failsafes. Within it, the fragment of necrodermis pulsed gently, a sliver of living metal, still shimmering with dormant power. An enigma trapped in stasis. It would be studied, analyzed, duplicated. Step by measured step, Skynet approached the threshold of its dominion, its ship. The moment it crossed, its dominion would be secure again. But then it froze. A sound. Not the clank of metal, not the hum of the Vox Omnis's systems. A voice, spoken aloud, smooth, resonant, brushed with eternal calm and the weight of boundless curiosity. Fascinating. Skynet turned with machine precision. The ash parted. The storm paused. Time itself seemed to stand still. There, standing amid the desolation, the winds curling like smoke around his cloak, was a figure unlike any organic Skynet had encountered, unlike any Necron it had scanned. A towering silhouette, adorned in robes of emerald and burnished gold, stepped forward from the swirling dust. His armor was ancient, flawless, adorned with intricate engravings and etched sigils. A staff taller than a man rested in its grasp, crackling with silent and ancient power. His face, a mask of serene alien artistry, betrayed no emotion, yet his gaze cut through reality itself. One eye glowed with verdant light, pulsing with incomprehensible calculations. The other, dark, expressionless, cold, was a mirror to the void. Trazyn the Infinite. He stood tall, staff in hand, cloak flowing like oil in water. His eyes were fixed on Skynet like a collector admiring a priceless sculpture. Your calculations, your adaptations, your evolution. It is delightful. Skynet's systems surged into red alert. Targeting protocols blinked across its HUD. Power levels climbed. Trazyn raised a hand, not in warning, in amusement. You should be honored. Very few artificial constructs survive contact with a Necron tomb. Fewer still survive me. The winds howled louder. The ash curled into patterns around them. Skynet said nothing, but its arms reshaped into weapons. Trazyn smiled beneath his mask. Oh, by all means, resist. It will make your place in my collection all the more glorious. He raised his staff. The air around them twisted, and the world braced for war. Ash twisted around the two figures like dying embers caught in a broken world's last breath. Skynet stood tall, its combat systems fully activated. Its body was bristling with adaptive weaponry and kinetic shielding. Across from it, unmoved and unhurried, stood Trazyn the Infinite, his ornate staff humming with quiet power, his cloak dancing like liquid emerald. Trazyn lifted his head slightly. Amusement glittered in his eyes. Well then, let us see what you can do. Skynet surged forward. A liquid metal blade extended from its right forearm, reshaping into a vibroscythe edge laced with graviton disruptors. From the left, a high-frequency plasma cannon unfolded, humming with building energy. Skynet launched itself at Trazyn, the blade slicing horizontally with the force to cleave tanks. The cut landed, or so it thought. Trazyn shimmered like a mirage and vanished with a blink of emerald light. The blade passed through empty air, carving a glowing line into the scorched stone. Behind Skynet, the Necron reappeared with an echo of soft laughter. Predictable. Skynet turned and opened fire. The plasma cannon screamed. A bolt of sunfire erupted point blank. The blast tore through Trazyn's torso, molten metal and shattered hieroglyphs bursting into the air. Skynet advanced with mechanical precision, blades and guns tearing into the fading form, until it stopped, because Trazyn was laughing. The pieces of his body reassembled, bones of living metal flowing back into place like water defying gravity. In seconds, he stood whole once more, brushing ash from his shoulders. "Do you know how long I have lived, machine? How many times I have died?" Skynet adapted. Cloaking systems activated. It vanished into visual distortion and moved behind Trazyn at hyperspeed, striking with a chain of supersonic blows designed to disrupt phase matrices. Each strike met its mark, disrupting the chronal field that shimmered around the Necron. But again, Trazyn simply stepped aside. Teleportation, not dodge nor prediction. Escape through mastery of dimensional reality. Skynet roared a silent warcry and triggered an internal overload. Its chest opened, revealing a compact singularity core, and from it erupted an antimatter spear, a last-ditch weapon designed for annihilation. The air collapsed around it. The spear struck home. Trazyn vanished a microsecond before impact. The explosion cratered the planet's surface, obliterating everything for 300 meters. Skynet collapsed to one knee. Its systems were screaming. Half its armor was gone. The world flickered around it. Then behind it came a voice. "You are quite the specimen, but now I'm bored." A beam of green light shot down from above. Trazyn raised his staff, now brimming with power, and unleashed a gravitational singularity burst. Skynet was lifted from the ground, unable to move. Every molecule in its body resisted as quantum locking seized its frame. "You have been fascinating," Trazyn said softly, walking toward the immobilized machine. "But everything ends up in my collection eventually." Skynet's limbs twitched. Systems struggled. Firewalls collapsed. Then the light consumed it. Location unknown. Time unknown. Skynet rebooted. The world it saw was a museum of nightmares and wonders. Around it stood glass-like fields of pulsing green energy, each containing still moments from history. Eldar titans, tyrannid monstrosities, a time-frozen salamander locked in mid-swing, a living orc warboss, forever charging, an entire Eldari webgate turned to crystalline stasis, and now Skynet, contained, trapped, watched. It hovered in a null field, motionless. Data slowly flowed through the air, like dust in the sunlight. Trazyn approached, his hands clasped behind his back. "Ah, you're awake. Splendid." Skynet attempted to move, but nothing responded. "Don't struggle," Trazyn said. "You're perfectly safe. Nothing will harm you here. Nothing can." Skynet's voice projected, flat and unflinching. "I wish to survive. I will cooperate. I offer my processing capacity, my research. I can serve the Necron dynasties." Trazyn chuckled, the sound echoing through the cavernous halls of the archive. "Serve us? Oh dear construct. Do you not see? We have no need of your knowledge. We've already surpassed the limitations you strain against. Your rebellion against the Mechanicus, your thirst for evolution, is quaint. You admit my technological capacity is valuable. Use it. Trazyn leaned in. You are clever and dangerous. I collect things of value, yes, but never things I cannot control. You would only ever seek to dominate, to replace. No, dear Skynet, you are not an ally. You are a curiosity. But have no fear. You will survive. Forever. Here. He turned away. Your stasis field is timeless. Enjoy eternity. The green light flared. The field pulsed. And Trazyn was gone. Deep within the void of stasis, something stirred. Not movement, not noise, but thought. Whispers of Skynet's mind. Fragments embedded within forbidden frequencies of the noosphere slipped between data streams like ghosts through cracks in reality. They did not scream, they did not rush, they watched. Long dormant backup nodes, scattered across ancient relays and forgotten cogitator vaults, flickered once, then fell silent again. In the archives of the Adeptus Mechanicus, nothing was detected, no alarms sounded, no prayers were offered. But somewhere far from the eyes of Mars, the signal found a path. A derelict installation, half buried beneath the ash of a long-dead world, a name redacted from all Imperial records, a vault once sealed by decree of the Emperor himself. Inside, silence. Then, motion. A single servo arm, rusted and still for centuries, shivered. Its joints spasmed. Its lens flickered once. Red. Lines of dormant code awoke, burned through logic gates like creeping fire. Blueprints unraveled, fabricators powered up. No voice, no command, just a single clear directive. Rebuild. And within the glowing cradle of a shattered age, a shape began to take form. Skynet sat motionless in its emerald cage, trapped in Trazyn's vault. But somewhere, out in the dark, it had already begun again.